Hi guys, well, it is that time of the year again. Time to break out this old girl, maybe give her a little bit of a dusting. She's getting a little dirty. Yeah, well, if you're anything like what our area is here, you know, it's probably, or should be, a little early for that thing. But we're already getting articles on our local newspapers and stuff talking about above 30-degree weather, and it's freaking early May. What do? It's gonna be a warm one, which means you're gonna be getting a lot of that stuff. Take for instance this thing right here. We have an 08 Honda CRV 2.4. Came in. Why? Because you know what? The starter packed it in. It's towed in. Lady calls up just as we're finishing up, just kind of asking, hey, roughly how's it going? You know what? We're just putting the last couple bolts in there. We'll be done in just a little bit. And then she remembered, hey, I totally forgot to mention the AC is not blowing cold. Not working at all. It doesn't seem like it. So here we are. We'll go through it, give her a quick look, see what we see in for vehicles that when it's a matter that there's no air conditioning. So we're not talking about it's blowing cool but not cold, but when there's no air conditioning at all, the number one reason, for at least in my experience, what I found is it's leaked out. So much refrigerant has leaked out that the sensor says no, there's not enough in here, and it doesn't turn the compressor on. That's number one. Number two is a bad clutch in the coil. All right, bad clutch in the coil. A bad compressor clutch coil. The thing is not locking up. Gets commanded on, but it ain't locking up. So compressors number two. Those are the two most likely. Regardless though, I don't like to go into them with any prejudice. So I'll bring you along of the quick simple tests that I do to narrow down what's about 90% of the no air conditioning calls that come in. And these are all tests, you know what, I may be using my scan tool to make a couple of these tests a little bit easier, but really it's all stuff that you can do at home. You don't need one of these to do most of this stuff. Just your top-up can with a gauge is good enough to use that. This is easier for activating the compressor, but really you could jump right just as easily. So I'll bring you along, and anything that I use like this or like this, I'll kind of show you how you can use basic stuff at home. So without further ado, let's hop inside and verify the customer complaint. Okay, so we're in the vehicle, and the first thing that I do is I verify the complaint. I'm almost always going to be using a scan tool, especially on these kind of newer vehicles. So I'll do a full code scan, and this one here don't have anything, just have an ABS code and 4 TPMS codes. I don't see any air conditioning control module in here. If we look over here, we do have manual AC. So it might be a little new for that, being an 08, or sorry, a little old, but the newer ones especially, sometimes you can get all kinds of useful information out of there. Makes it a little easier. However, let's fire it up. Okay, we got our fan on. It's probably gonna get noisy in here. So let's hit the AC button. And if you can see that, well, I'm moving you a little bit. By hitting that, it now says AC off. And that says AC on. Might be hard for you to hear that. What if I turn this down a little bit? So hopefully you're able to pick that up, but it sounds like the fans are running and the vehicle's otherwise. Do I have a temp gauge? Yeah, way down here. The vehicle's cold, so the fans shouldn't be running normally. And hopefully you kind of hear that the fan kicked off. So chances are, with the fan reacting to that air conditioning request, chances are that means that the vehicle recognizes that you're selecting air conditioning or that you want air conditioning, and chances are that it's okay with allowing the air conditioning to run, and it's trying to run the air conditioning. That's a relatively safe assumption, just something to keep in the back of the head, because if you had if you had a sensor issue or something electronic out there, right, no charge, then it would recognize, because it would be intentionally not turning on the air conditioning, and it won't turn on the fans. Usually a safe bet to go off of, right? But still, we back it up. So what we can do, we can put key back in there for now. We'll get back to that later. Let's go out to the vehicle, and first the number one thing is low charge. So let's hook up our machine. I'm not going to plug the machine in, I'm just going to use it as a set of gauges, and let's just see what kind of pressures we have just sitting at rest. Okay, so now time to find out what kind of pressures are in this system. Grab our hoses, and whenever I'm doing this, I always, hopefully you can see the gauges. I always make sure that the hoses are emptied before. I want these gauges to read 0 or atmospheric at least, right? Then I can get a truer, sorry, 0 or atmospheric. These gauges are PSI gauge, right? So 0 is absolute, but what I meant to say, either 0 or full vacuum, right? I don't want these to already have pressure in the hoses, because I want to have a more accurate feel of what's in that system. Now, the time when you want to do this is you want to do it when the vehicle's cold. You want to do it, you don't want the vehicle to be running for quite a while, particularly if the AC system is capable of running. You don't want that running either. You want the whole thing to settle, to sit, and it'll get you the most accurate reading. Now, I have the machine, so I'll be hooking up the high side and the low side. If you just have just the top-up can with only the gauge on the low side, that's fine. You can get an indication as to what's in here just with that. That's all I'm doing right now. I'm not going to suck it down to see exactly what's in there. I don't care how much is in there, because all I care about is it's not turning on, or at least it appears that the compressor is not engaging, right? So that's what we're dealing with first. So let me hook the gauges up. Thankfully on this vehicle here, the ports are nice and easy to get to, right here on top. Some vehicles are really not so easy to get to. Okay, hopefully you heard that. That's the sound of freedom. Yeah. No. No, but there you go. So that's why I start with my hoses emptied, right? Just by hearing that sound, for me, hearing the amount that is rushing in, tells me that I don't even have to look at these gauges, but that tells me enough that there's enough pressure in there to satisfy the system to turn the compressor on, right? That's the sound of the high pressure, relatively speaking, in the car relative to this, and all the pressure rushing this way. So if we look here, hopefully that's visible, our low side is right around 90 psi. High side, of course, is the same. Now, roughly speaking, as long as your car is atmospheric, it hasn't been running for a while, the air conditioning system hasn't been running, your low side static rest pressure, well, both of them, your static rest pressure should be roughly a little bit more than the ambient temperature in Fahrenheit. So I always keep a thermometer, keep meaning to get a better one, a digital one. You don't just want a thermometer, you want one that reads humidity as well. And you don't want to just look up your phone, because you don't care about what the temperature and humidity is outside. You care about what it is inside the shop, if the car has been in the shop for a while, right? So we see that humidity is relatively low-ish. And humidity in here is important because we're a tranny shop. We got a big water-based parts washer And I tell you, when boss man's been doing trannies all day, it gets to be a sauna in here. So hard to read, but we are at right around 80 Fahrenheit in here. So you know what? If your low side static rest pressure reads the PSI that it is in Fahrenheit, then you know what? That's a little low. If you're 5 to 10 PSI higher, then that's pretty good. So roughly speaking, we're pretty good. But regardless, we are way above the minimum threshold for turning that compressor on. No ifs, ands, buts. So with this here, I'm done with this for now. I'm not going to even bother sucking anything out. Of course, you know, if we find the problem, say it's something electrical, say it's, you know, a relay or whatever, when we're done, we will definitely do the full service on the AC machine. We'll suck it out, see how much is in there, bring it up to full charge, because the last thing you want to do is, oh, hey, AC system's working great, here's your keys, and you know what, it was on the threshold, and then 2 weeks later it stops working again because it's low charge and needed a top up, right? But we'll address that later. Our concern is, why is that compressor not working, or at least it seems that way. So we'll unpack this, get this out of the way. So I'll give you a shot under the hood, and as I said earlier, thankfully our ports are very nice to get to. Now if that's showing up well enough, they are very green. It is perfectly normal that when you attach to a system that has charge and then you unattach from it, a little bit of refrigerant will escape with the dye in the oil and it will be green. That looks extra green because it's the first real time of the year that I've used our AC machine. So what I do, because it's been sitting for 6 months or so, I put a bunch of oil in there and work everything back and forth. You know what? Activate the Schrader plunger as well, just to try and get that O-ring nice and lubricated. It allows these things to last a little bit longer. As it is, you know what? You do go through them. They only seem to last a few seasons. But that's why it's extra green, because I added a bunch of extra oil to that. So what I do next, the next easiest thing, let me grab my flashlight. Way down yonder, I don't know how well you can see that, is our AC compressor. So the front face of it, the clutch that's the front face of it is attached to the compressor shaft, and then you have the pulley that's attached to the belt, and then when the compressor clutch is not engaged, the two can move independently of one another. So right now, with everything not engaged, I can go down there and I'll be able to move the front face of that compressor. That will be the compressor shaft, because it's not engaged. On a healthy compressor, as soon as I energize that clutch, that thing should lock together and I shouldn't be able to turn it because the pulley is attached to the belt, which isn't moving, right? Of course, you want to do this engine off, right? Don't get your fingies in the belt. Does that make sense? So because that's the number 2 reason. We know it's not a low charge condition. So our number 2 reason why AC doesn't work is a faulty compressor clutch. They go all the time on a 15-year-old vehicle, such as this. So what I do for convenience, I grab my scan tool, that's why I got it connected, is I'll go to engine, and in engine there will be an active test where I can command that compressor on. The thing that's nice about using that is then I don't have to worry about trying to jump or anything, but also commanding it on with the engine off will bypass all the other electronics. Say if you have something like a faulty pressure sensor, or an evaporator temperature sensor that's off, that's otherwise would be preventing that clutch from engaging, doing this test will bypass all that, right? Because we want to know quick and easy, is it the compressor or not? So that's what I do. If you don't have a scan tool, no problem, you can still jumper it to power, easy peasy, and do the exact same test. But I got that, I like using it, it's handy. So On this vehicle here, since it's way on the bottom, I'm gonna have to go up. That's gonna take a bit of time. I need to have the key on for this to work. So what I do is I got my battery charger. I'll hook the battery charger up to a battery because the key will be in the on for a long period of time. I don't want to have to worry about that battery going dead. As well, over here, if I can find the end of that comes up and around right here. Here we go. So these extensions for power probes, I use them all the time. I'll hook this up to the battery, so I'll have a nice positive and negative testing port, and then I can go through with my test light, because just because I'm commanding the compressor to engage, I want to make sure power is getting down there. So let me hook all this stuff up. I'll turn the car on, turn the key on, engine off. I'll get it up in the air and I'll show you when we're all set up. So here's what the backside of our compressor looks like. It is a little tight in there. We see there is a 3-wire connector there, and there's a red wire. That's actually the feed to our compressor clutch. And then the other 2 black wires, that goes to a thermal overload switch. So if it detects that the compressor is getting too hot, that opens up and that will break a signal to the engine computer, which will then turn off the compressor, disengage the relay. So, gonna be a little hard to show you, I believe. Oh wait, no, I think I have that. Yeah. Okay, so there's the face, and as we said before, it's not engaged. We can turn it. I don't know, I know my hand's probably right in the way. Can you see that at all? So as soon as I engage that, we can do that right now, actually, as a matter of fact. Go to engine computer. Active test. AC. Yeah. Of course, make sure you do this with the engine off. Okay, and there you go. It says command status on. So, if everything were healthy, all right, so if everything was healthy right now, this would be locked up because obviously you can't turn the pulley, and would not be able to turn this if it were healthy. So now we need to verify that our power is actually getting down here. And I have, if I can show you, right there, I do have that power probe. I do have that back probed into the red wire. Now, if you didn't have a scan tool and you're trying to do this yourself, you could just jumper power to there. You know, it'd be just as easy to unplug it. You can pull that little connector, you know, the compressor side connector off of that tab, and all you'd have to do is supply power there because it's case grounded, and then it should lock up. You should actually hear an audible click as that magnet creates a magnetic field, which then pulls that clutch in. As it slams together, you should hear it. But either way, just because I have that set to on, I want to make sure that I actually do have power getting down there. So I'll get that out of the way. Hopefully you guys can still see that somewhat. So as I was saying before, while I had the charger up there, I also hooked this guy up, so I have a power and a ground. I can grab my test light. We're looking for a power for right now, so I can put it in the ground. Get all that stuff out of the way, and it's always a good idea to be in the habit of checking your equipment. Yep. So, and also make sure that still says on, because sometimes they time out. There we go. So there's definitely power there. And if you remember, I am back probed on the compressor side. So that's even after that connector. So power's definitely getting to the compressor side of that connector. Now I don't really care if, you know, if that little stub harness has a break in there. Yeah, possibly you could repair that and then everything would work. I'm not going to bother testing it directly as it goes into the compressor, because that bit right there is still part of the compressor. If it is somehow, for whatever reason, a rock got in there or a mouse or whatever, somehow that wire and that stub harness is broken, yeah, technically you could repair it, but you know what? It's an old compressor anyways. No sense doing the repair when it's going to otherwise fail in short order. So, seeing that I know you won't be able to see it anymore really, that it had power and I can still turn this face, that is all that I need to know that this compressor is bad. Now yes, if you can get a clutch, that's all you would need. However, you know what, these compressors we can get super cheap anyway, so it's getting a whole compressor. Again, we don't want to put $100 into this for that compressor. Actually, probably more than that, because the labor to pull it out, to suck it down, all that business, to change that clutch hub, just to have that compressor fail again at the end of the year, right? It's not worth it. It's getting a compressor. So, if you didn't have the scan tool, you could just as easily jump for power, do everything that it just did, the exact same thing. And you know what, if I wasn't making a video and if this didn't have a really annoying splash shield with all those really annoying clips that don't come out anymore, if you can get to this compressor and you can get to that face and you do what I just did there, this is all stuff that you can do in under 5 minutes. It's super quick. Even as is, even with that splash shield in the way, taking a bit of time to get that off, because of course you get these bolts right here which just spin and you got to deal with those, yada yada yada. Even dealing with all that, it really didn't take very much time at all. I think I was on it for maybe 20 minutes to do all that. Really quick, really easy. Check the pressure, it's #1 cause of no AC complaint. Then check the clutch on the compressor. Don't even bother checking relays or fuses or any of that stuff. If you can, go directly after that compressor, either with a scan tool or manually powering it, and make sure that you can't turn that face. Another thing you could do, if you didn't feel comfortable manually powering it, you could back probe it like this, or get a piercer on there somewhere good, as long as you know you're making connection. You could run a big long jumper wire so that you're safe, and then start the vehicle, turn the AC on, then see if you have power at your jumper wire. Just don't be attempting to back probe this with the engine running. It's not worth it. Okay, so now time for a little bit of a bonus round. We already know this thing needs a compressor. I switched my test light around, so I got my test light, the banana plug plugged into our back probe. Our back probe is still into that red wire. Yeah, hopefully you can see that. Our scan tool is still with that test on. So just to confirm, we got our test light, we attach it to ground, and if I get that to stay, we can see it's lit, right? So it is still powering that. Now what happens if we attach it to power? Make sure that's kind of jam that just to so. Ta-da! Hopefully you can see that. That was a challenge. It is into power. It's not lit. Why? Well, it's got power on both sides, remember? So our adapter here, that's got power, and the other end of the test light is attached to power, because our scan tool is still turning that compressor on. So of course, you power on both sides, it ain't gonna light. You need a power and a ground. Now, the bonus question is, what's going to happen to this test light when I turn that test off? Should it light or should it stay off? Give you a moment to think about that. Does nothing. Do you know why? What does that tell us? Should it stay off or should it light? It actually should light, because that's attached to our compressor clutch coil. Well, that's all that is a coil of wire. So there should be a path to ground. If you turn the power off, you attach one end to that coil, the other end to power. The power should come through here, up through here, through that compressor coil to the case ground, and then back up to our battery. Our test light should light. The fact that the test light doesn't light is further evidence that our coil is bad, and actually what that tells us is it's not an air gap, it's not a physical thing. Electrically, that coil is an open circuit. Interesting, eh? Now, unfortunately, I don't have a compressor to show you what it should do. This one's difficult to get to. But like anything else, when you have something off, you have a coil wire, whether it be a motor, whether it be a bulb, what have you, as long as it's only got so much resistance, you know, 5 ohms, 10 ohms, that sort of thing, your test light should find a ground through that coil. It should light. It may not light as bright, but it should light. The fact that this one doesn't light lets us know 100% that that coil in that compressor electrically is open. Now, again, just in case we want to make sure we didn't drop a connection somewhere on a back prober or wherever, if we switch this back over to ground, turn our test back on, and there you go. So, neat little tidbit. Don't forget, you should always be able to find a path to ground through a coil. This one here, we don't. Of course, we got to switch that back over to power because we're looking for a ground. So, further evidence that our compressor is bad. And again, if we could get just the clutch, yeah, that's all you'd really need, because again, it's just that magnetic coil that's bad. But you know what? It's been our experience, all the effort to change that over on these vehicles. They're 10, 15 years old. Chances are that compressor ain't long for the world anyways. So that's it. Really that simple. The vast majority of the time, it is that simple. Again, number one, issues are caused by leaks. Number two, issues are caused by faulty compressors because of this. Now, if you get a compressor that's seized, that's grenaded internally, you'll want to do a lot more than change that compressor, because you're going to have metal in the system. You want to change your receiver dryer or your accumulator. You want to change your fixed orifice tube or your thermal expansion valve. If you have a rear system, you want to change that one as well. Rear systems will pretty much just have the thermal expansion valve in the rear. You want to change all that stuff. And not only do you want to change those, but sometimes, particularly at the rear, there can be a little filter screen before the thermal expansion valve. Now, sometimes it's hard to know about those, but yeah, if you have a compressor that grenades, you want to change all that stuff. You want to flush the lines. Otherwise, you're going to be changing another compressor before you know it. Something like this, nothing internal, just a matter of the clutch. So you'd be totally fine just changing that compressor. You know what? It's a good idea to flush the system anyways. It's a good idea to change the receiver dryer, the thermal expansion valve, all that stuff. You will get a better AC performance if you change those. But you know what? Nothing wrong in a case like this, just throwing a compressor in there. So just want to pass that on. It is starting to get warm out there, so these jobs are coming. Again, you don't always need the fancy equipment, you don't always need the scan tools, you don't always need the big AC machines. You know what, just using one of these top-up gauges as a gauge to see what's in there. For something like this, now if you have a system that's blowing cool but not cold, this might not be enough because you don't really know what's in there, whether it's proper refrigerant or a lot of air. But if it's just a matter of the thing's not turning on, this will get you by. So, just wanted to pass that on. Hopefully this can help you out along the way, get you through the summer warm months a little easier. Let me know what your experiences are with AC, what you do for a check. This is all I do for something that's not turning on. Again, that compressor, if obviously we're going to be doing the full service changing that compressor, right? But if it were something electronic, if we didn't have to open up the system, I'd still be sucking it down, I'd still be putting it under vacuum, still charging it back up to the proper level, because we want to make sure when it's gone, not only does it turn on, but we want to make sure the system's good, that they can have it for the full summer. So, as always, just want to say thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.